Death is a certainty for us all, but some people meet their end in ways so bizarre, they seem almost unreal. From freak accidents to inexplicable twists of fate, these deaths will leave you questioning what's possible. Could fate be playing a cruel joke, or is something more sinister at work? Get ready to hear the strangest and most mind-boggling stories in 2 hours of the most unusual deaths in human history. Convicted in 1981 for a heinous crime, Michael Anderson Godwin's life unfolded through a series of consequential events, culminating in a death that echoed the very punishment he once faced, yet managed to escape. Some would say his death was a case of poetic justice, but what happened to the 28-year-old? In 1978, Michael Anderson Godwin, who also went by the name Michael Anderson Sloan, was serving time for a robbery conviction when he was allowed temporary work release. During one of these periods, he committed a brutal crime. The victim, 24-year-old Mary Elizabeth Royam, was found in her West Columbia apartment, where she had been assaulted and struck repeatedly with an electric iron. The cruelty of the act and its devastating aftermath were shocking. When the case went to trial in 1981, Godwin was convicted and faced the grim sentence of death by the electric chair, then South Carolina's standard method of execution. However, 2 years later, in 1983, his sentence was reversed. A retrial found him not guilty of part of the original charges, and the death penalty was commuted to life imprisonment. This reprieve marked what many would consider a monumental twist of fortune. Escaping the electric chair was no small victory. Perhaps not wanting to waste his chance at life, Michael Anderson Godwin made efforts to change. Over the following years, he exhibited what prison authorities described as model behavior. He pursued his education, earning 2 college degrees and nurturing aspirations of working with young people upon his potential release. Yet his story took an abrupt, tragic turn that underscored the irony of life and death. In March 1989, Godwin was alone in his cell at the Central Correctional Institution in Columbia, South Carolina. He was sitting on a metal toilet, completely naked, attempting to repair a pair of malfunctioning earphones connected to his television set. Due to prison regulations, only earphones were allowed, and Godwin, lacking proper tools, decided to use his teeth to strip the insulation from the wires. Unbeknownst to him, his method of improvisation would prove fatal. The metal toilet he sat on, combined with his contact with the exposed wires, created a conduit that led to an intense electric shock. The current surged through his body, amplified by the metal beneath him, a conductive surface, and stopped his heart on the spot. The electrocution left severe burns on his mouth and tongue, a cruel irony for a man who had narrowly escaped death by electric chair years earlier. Godwin was discovered lifeless during a routine cell check, with the coroner's report confirming accidental death. The irony of Godwin's end was impossible to overlook. Here was a man who had spent years under the shadow of an electric execution, and just when he thought he had escaped that fate, he died through electrocution of his own making. His death was an incredible twist. For some, this outcome might have appeared as poetic justice, considering that an electric iron was the weapon used in the crime that sealed his fate. For others, it was a tragic conclusion for a man who, despite his dark past, had shown signs of reform and a desire to contribute positively to society. If anything, his death was proof that fate, and maybe uninformed decisions, proved the limits of human control. On July 2, 2011, Felipe Cantos, a 55-year-old man from Parrish, New York, set out to participate in a rally, a protest against mandatory helmet laws. Known as a seasoned rider with 3 decades of experience, Cantos joined approximately 550 other participants in an event organized by the Onondaga chapter of American Bikers Aim Towards Education, or ABATE. ABATE, an organization that advocated for the voluntary use of helmets while opposing state-enforced mandates, had held this rally annually for 11 years around the July 4th weekend. Cantos was adamant about his position, but in an unexpected and ironic twist of fate, he died proving the opposite of his beliefs. At 55 years old, Felipe Cantos was an avid sportsman who worked in construction. He would often participate in activities such as archery, hunting, and fishing. It's safe to say he was an active man. Even more, he was a motorcyclist. Although he was not an official member of ABATE, Cantos chose to join the rally that day to show his support for what he and many others saw as a symbol of personal liberty. In 2011, New York was one of 20 states that mandated helmet use for all motorcyclists. Cantos didn't agree. In 2011, statistics from safety organizations such as the Governor's Highway Safety Association underscored the effectiveness of helmets in preventing fatalities. They stated that helmets meeting federal standards could reduce the likelihood of death by more than 40% in the event of an accident. Nevertheless, for many motorcyclists, the decision to wear or not wear a helmet was intertwined with notions of freedom and personal responsibility, values that Cantos held. July 2, 2011, was a hot, sunny day in Onondaga. The rally started with a sense of shared purpose. Riders were informed that wearing helmets was optional. After all, they were advocating for the freedom to choose. Cantos chose not to wear a helmet. The ride was about 30 miles long from Syracuse to Lake Como near Cortland. As the procession of motorcycles wound its way along the roads, the unexpected occurred. Cantos, riding a 1983 Harley-Davidson, encountered sudden difficulties. According to reports, his motorcycle fishtailed when he applied the brakes, leading him to lose control. In a split second, he was thrown over the handlebars and struck the pavement, unprotected. The force of the impact resulted in severe head trauma, and Cantos was pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital. The attending police and medical experts revealed a sobering truth. Had Cantos been wearing a helmet, his injuries would likely not have been fatal. The accident was the only recorded fatality in the 11-year history of the Onondaga ABATE protest rides. This fact deepened the shock and sorrow that rippled through the community, highlighting the unpredictability of life and the profound consequences that can arise from simple choices. Cantos's death came as a true and powerful example of the risks associated with not wearing helmets. However, ABATE's stance on helmet laws reflected their belief that personal choice should outweigh government mandates. Despite this tragedy, leaders within the organization, including Christine Rathbun, president of the Syracuse chapter, affirmed that the accident would not alter their commitment to advocating for riders' freedom of choice. Rathbun expressed that while they mourned the loss of Cantos, the underlying principle of individual rights remained unchanged. Philip A. Cantos, a man who valued his freedom and joined a rally to support it, met his end in a manner that underscored the very risks he accepted by choosing to ride without a helmet. What was meant to be an uneventful overnight flight from Moscow to Hong Kong became one of the most haunting aviation disasters in history, the result of a reckless decision. Aeroflot Flight 593 departed Sheremetyevo International Airport on March 23, 1994, carrying 75 people aboard an Airbus A310, bound for Kai-Tak Airport. Operated by Russian International Airlines, the flight included mostly Russian nationals, with about 30 airline employees and their families, as well as several businessmen from Hong Kong and Taiwan. On board were Captain Andrei Danilov, First Officer Igor Piskaryov, and Relief Captain Yaroslav Kudrinsky, an experienced pilot with over 8,900 flying hours. Kudrinsky had also brought along his two children, Yana and Eldar, on their first international trip, a decision that would prove catastrophic. It was shortly after midnight, roughly halfway through the flight, and the plane was cruising over Siberia. Captain Kudrinsky invited his two children into the cockpit. He wanted to let them experience flying. At 12:43 a.m., Yana, age 13, was seated at the controls while Kudrinsky subtly adjusted the autopilot's heading to give her the illusion of turning the plane. She had no real control. A few minutes later, Eldar, aged 15, took his turn in the seat. What followed was a sequence of devastating mistakes. By moving the control stick for over 30 seconds, Eldar unknowingly partially disengaged the autopilot. The crew, unfamiliar with the aircraft, didn't notice the change. And then, the aircraft began a slow but steady roll to the right. As the bank angle increased, the pilot started noticing something was amiss. In just seconds, the aircraft tilted beyond 45 degrees, then past 90, an angle the Airbus A310 was never meant to sustain. Gravity forced the plane into a rapid descent, and the increased G-forces hampered the crew's movements. The autopilot, only partially engaged, attempted to correct the climb and maintain altitude. This caused the plane to stall, and finally the autopilot disengaged entirely, leaving the crew with full manual control. Kudrinsky managed to return to his seat and told his children to return to their seats. The situation was dire. The pilots tried to correct the mistakes, but it was no use. The plane began spinning. They recovered briefly, just long enough to attempt another correction, but the plane started spinning again. By then, the aircraft had lost too much altitude. At 12:58 a.m., 16 minutes after Yana first entered the cockpit, Aeroflot Flight 593 slammed into the Kuznetsk-Alito mountain range at roughly 160 miles per hour. All 63 passengers and 12 crew were killed on impact. No distress call was made. The landing gear was up. All passengers were secured in their seats, having been prepared for an emergency, though they had no way of knowing the true extent of the danger. The wreckage, strewn across a remote Siberian hillside, was discovered 2 days later, and flight data recorders were recovered soon after. In the aftermath, Aeroflot initially denied any breach of protocol in the cockpit, but when a Moscow-based magazine published transcripts from the cockpit voice recorder, the truth emerged. The final moments captured chilling warnings from Kudrinsky to his children, including a desperate plea for Eldar to move to the back of the cockpit. He attempted to soothe them with reassurances that everything was normal, when in fact the situation was out of control. Investigations found no technical faults with the aircraft. Analysts concluded that had the crew allowed the autopilot to correct the aircraft's initial dive without interference, the plane would have stabilized and the crash might have been avoided. The accident served as a grim reminder of the consequences of disregarding cockpit protocols. For the families of the victims, especially those who had placed their trust in an experienced crew and a reputable airline, the emotional toll was immeasurable. In the years that followed, mourners from Russia, China, and Taiwan visited the crash site, leaving flowers, handwritten notes, and fragments of memories scattered across the desolate hillside where 75 lives had ended in silence. What began as a seemingly harmless act of late-night fun at a Southeast Texas marina quickly spiraled into a devastating tragedy. Wanting to have a little fun, Tommy Woodward shrugged off clear warnings and entered dangerous waters, literally and fatally, setting off a chain of events that left witnesses traumatized and a community reeling. It was the 3rd of July, 2015. 28-year-old Tommy Woodward had recently relocated from St. Louis to Orange, Texas, alongside his twin brother. The two were trying to rebuild their lives and had found work at a nearby shipyard. Known around Burkert's Marina as a regular face, Tommy was outgoing and carefree. Every Thursday night, he could be found playing pool and shuffleboard with friends, enjoying the relaxed atmosphere of the marina's small restaurant that served burgers and beer. But on that particular night, Tommy's usual routine took a dark turn. Sometime after midnight, Tommy arrived at Burkert's Marina with a young woman, his girlfriend. Despite the late hour and multiple warnings, he declared his intention to jump into the bayou that ran along the property. Staff and witnesses told him not to, pointing out the large, recently spotted alligator and a posted sign that read, "No swimming, alligators." The sign had only gone up days earlier, after employees noticed a predator estimated to be over 11 feet long circling the area. Ignoring both the sign and the verbal warnings, Tommy removed his shirt and wallet, uttered a dismissive remark about the alligators, and leapt into the dark water. According to authorities and witnesses, the attack happened almost immediately. He surfaced once, yelling at his girlfriend to get out. Then he was pulled under, resurfaced face down, and was dragged beneath the surface again by the massive alligator. His girlfriend, unharmed, had either jumped in after Tommy or had been in the water already, according to conflicting witness accounts. Either way, she made it to safety, shaken and screaming that an alligator had taken him. Witness Michelle Wright, an employee at the marina and friend of Tommy's, rushed to the edge of the water and spotted his body briefly with a flashlight before it disappeared once more. The horror was overwhelming, and for those who saw it happen, it was an image they said they would never forget. Emergency services responded around 2:30 a.m. Officers with the Orange Police Department and a Texas Parks and Wildlife game warden searched by boat for hours. Around 4:30 a.m., Tommy's body was recovered near the bayou's edge. He had suffered severe trauma to his left arm and upper chest. Authorities believed he ultimately drowned, but portions of his body were later found inside the animal, confirming the deadly force of the attack. The alligator had vanished during the initial response, but just days later, a local man known as Bear admitted to trapping and killing the creature using chicken as bait. The reptile, a 400-pound, 11-foot male, was found near the marina and shot dead. Texas Parks and Wildlife officials later confirmed that Tommy's remains were inside the animal. Though Bear violated hunting laws by taking matters into his own hands, he was only issued a warning and not charged. According to officials, unprovoked alligator attacks are extremely rare in Texas, making this the first fatal incident in recorded state history. However, those weeks had seen increased alligator activity due to heavy rainfall and the animal's nesting season. Alligators, territorial by nature and opportunistic predators, become particularly aggressive during that time of year. Tommy's family and friends were left devastated, struggling to process a preventable tragedy that unfolded in front of their eyes. The marina staff, especially those who had warned him moments before, remained haunted by the outcome. His twin brother, who had moved with him for a fresh start, was left to identify his body and face a future forever altered. Though the alligator was eventually captured and killed, it brought little solace. One decision to defy nature's dangers had cost Tommy Woodward his life. It began as a reckless thrill, an attempt to chase a kind of adrenaline rush that had been inspired by online videos. But for Francois Halle, what started as a dangerous stunt quickly turned into something far more tragic, an irreversible moment that left his friends in shock and a community in mourning. At 22 years old, Francois was described by those who knew him as fun-loving and adventurous. The young man was part of a tight-knit group of friends in Quebec who had recently taken a growing interest in a viral stunt known as couch surfing. Inspired by videos posted online, the activity involved sitting on a couch or sofa tied to the back of a moving vehicle, often a truck or van, and being dragged at high speeds along rural roads. For Francois and his friends, it became a way to break the routine, to feel alive, and to chase a thrill without fully considering the consequences. One day in February 2012, Francois was riding on a couch that had been mounted on top of a sled and tied to the back of a van. The group of friends had chosen a country road in Saint-Benjamin, a rural area located south of Quebec City, where they believed traffic would be light and the setting ideal for another round of what had become their favorite activity. Driving the van was 21-year-old Alex Labe, a friend of Francois and a regular participant in these outings. By all accounts, the group believed they had figured out a way to make the stunt safe enough to repeat regularly, drawing false confidence from past experiences where nothing had gone wrong. But everything changed that day. As the van picked up speed, the sled and sofa setup trailed behind, with Francois holding on, seated and exposed. But at some point during the ride, Alex lost control of the van. The sled swung violently and the couch carrying Francois veered into the opposite lane. It all happened in an instant. An oncoming vehicle struck the sofa directly, the impact catastrophic. Francois was thrown and left critically injured on the roadside. Emergency services rushed him to the hospital, but the severity of his injuries proved too great. He was pronounced dead shortly after. In the immediate aftermath of the crash, Alex fled the scene. He was later arrested at his home in St. George. According to police, he was in shock, overwhelmed by the sight of his friend lying lifeless on the road. A mutual friend of both men, Yann Laflamme, later said that Alex's flight was not about avoiding accountability, but rather a moment of panic. He described Alex as distraught, struggling to process the horror of what had just occurred. Alex was arraigned in court in Saint-Joseph-de-Beauce and faced multiple charges: dangerous driving causing death, criminal negligence causing death, and fleeing the scene of an accident. For the group of friends who had once embraced couch surfing as harmless fun, the tragedy forced a reckoning. They openly acknowledged that what once seemed like an exciting way to pass time was, in truth, a deadly risk. Jan, who had often joined the stunts, admitted they were drawn in by the appeal of the videos they saw online. Francois is believed to be the first person to die while attempting the viral activity, a grim milestone that underscores the lethal consequences of imitating dangerous stunts for entertainment. It was December 22, 2024 in Brooklyn, New York. At the Coney Island Stillwell Avenue station, a 57-year-old woman named Debrina Kawam was asleep on a subway train. The station was quiet, the train sitting idle. But what happened next would shock the city and make national headlines. Debrina had once been full of life. In her high school years in Little Falls, New Jersey, she was a cheerleader and waitress, known for her energy and charisma. She was voted most punk and had a $1 million smile. But as time passed, life took a different turn. She struggled with homelessness and alcohol addiction, living in shelters across New York City. Despite this, people still remembered her. One of them was Mark Montaigne, a former high school friend. He recalled her as the life of the party, someone who was always smiling. He never imagined that years later she would become the victim of such a horrifying crime. That morning, Debrina was alone, dozing off on the subway. At 7:30 a.m., a man approached her. He was later identified as 33-year-old Sebastian Zapita Khalil, an undocumented immigrant from Guatemala. He had previously been deported in 2018 but had managed to return to the U.S. Without warning, Zapita Khalil pulled out a lighter and set Debrina's clothing on fire. The flames spread quickly, engulfing her as she slept. The scene was horrifying. A bystander caught it on video. Zapita Khalil calmly walked away and sat on a bench watching as she burned. Witnesses were frozen in shock. Security footage later showed police arriving, but one officer simply walked past Debrina without helping. This response would spark outrage when the video surfaced. An MTA worker finally grabbed a fire extinguisher and put out the flames, but it was too late. Debrina was pronounced dead at 7:48 a.m. from severe burns and smoke inhalation. For over a week, authorities struggled to identify her. They used advanced fingerprinting techniques, and on December 31, 2024, her identity was finally confirmed. The news hit hard, not just because of how she died, but because of the person she had once been. Debrina had dreams. She had once wanted to be a flight attendant. She had a magnetic personality, charming customers as a waitress at Perkins Pancake House. Even in tough times, she stayed connected to her past. A former neighbor recalled seeing her outside her mother's house, unaware that her mom had moved. Her tragic death shocked old friends and sparked debates about public safety and immigration policies. Many believed this crime could have been prevented. Zapita Khalil was arrested the same day after students recognized him from the video and tipped off the police. He was found with a lighter in his pocket. When questioned, he claimed he had no memory of what happened, saying he had been drinking. Whether this was true or an excuse remains unclear. He was charged with first-degree and second-degree murder as well as arson. If convicted, he could face life in prison without parole. Beyond the legal case, Debrina's death raised painful questions. How had she ended up in such a vulnerable position? Her friends and family were left wondering how someone so full of life had fallen through the cracks. It also highlighted the dangers faced by people experiencing homelessness. They are often at risk of violence, and Debrina's case was a tragic example of that reality. As for Zapita Khalil, his trial will determine his fate, but the damage has already been done. Those who knew Debrina will remember her not for how she died, but for who she was, a bright, energetic woman whose life took a tragic turn. Her story is heartbreaking. It's not just about a horrific crime. It's about a person who was once loved, once full of promise, and who, in the end, was left unprotected in a world that had forgotten her. It was a quiet Monday in 2023 in Harlan, Kentucky. Michael Wayne Alford, 59, was outside his home tending to a few tasks. He was moving an old bag of potting soil, unaware that inside it was a hidden wasp nest. As soon as he disturbed it, the wasps swarmed aggressively. Within moments, Michael was stung multiple times. The venom spread quickly through his body, making it difficult for him to breathe. His daughter, Marlana Ledford, heard the commotion and rushed to his side. Realizing the severity of the situation, she immediately began CPR. Shortly after, Michael's son, Mitch, arrived and joined her efforts, desperately trying to keep their father alive. Despite their efforts, the wasps continued to attack and Michael's condition worsened. Knowing time was running out, the family called 911. Paramedics arrived quickly and took over the life-saving efforts. But the venom had already taken a serious toll. Michael's breathing became weaker and he eventually lost consciousness. He was rushed to Harlan ARH Hospital, but just under 2 hours after the attack, he was pronounced dead at 5:50 p.m. The coroner later confirmed that respiratory failure caused by the stings had taken his life. It was a sudden and devastating accident. Michael's family was in shock. His son, Mitch, later shared how difficult the loss had been. "It's a big burden on us, my mom and the whole family," he said in an interview. Michael was more than just a father. He was a devoted grandfather, a man who loved simple pleasures like four-wheeling, playing the piano, and collecting knives. He was also deeply rooted in his faith, known for his humble and reserved nature. His passing left a deep void in his family. His wife of 41 years, Chichi Margaline Margot Hughes Alford, was left without her lifelong partner. Their 3 children and 11 grandchildren were left grieving a sudden and tragic loss. Michael had pre-existing health conditions, including a heart condition, which may have made the reaction to the venom even worse. Still, no one could have expected that something as routine as moving a bag of soil would lead to such a tragedy. While it's rare, cases like Michael's do happen. Between 2011 and 2021, there were 788 reported deaths from bee, wasp, and hornet stings in the U.S., averaging around 72 per year. Most people recover from stings, but for those with allergies or underlying health issues, the effects can be deadly. Wasps and hornets in particular are more aggressive than bees and will attack in large numbers if they feel threatened. Statistics show that men are more likely to die from insect stings than women. The most common cause of death is respiratory failure, which happens when the venom triggers severe swelling, making it impossible to breathe. Once this reaction starts, it can become life-threatening within minutes. Experts advise that if you encounter an aggressive swarm, the best thing to do is move away quickly and seek shelter. Swatting at the insects or staying in the area can make them more aggressive. The University of Arizona's College of Agriculture and Life Sciences warns that disturbing a nest, even unintentionally, can lead to serious consequences, as seen in Michael's case. In the aftermath of his passing, Michael's family struggled with both grief and financial burdens. His daughter, Marlana, started a GoFundMe to help cover funeral expenses. Since Michael didn't have life insurance, the family was left to manage the costs on their own. By Thursday, donations had reached just over half of their goal, offering some relief in an otherwise painful time. The funeral was scheduled at Evart's Funeral Home, where family and friends would say their final goodbyes. As they prepared for the service, they were left with the heartbreaking reality of losing someone they loved in such an unexpected way. Michael's passing is a reminder that danger can come from the most unexpected places. A simple act like moving a bag of soil led to an irreversible tragedy. For those who live in areas where wasps and other insects are common, awareness and caution can make all the difference. For Michael's family, no amount of warning could have prepared them for this loss. They are now left to grieve the man who meant so much to them, a father, husband, and grandfather taken too soon by an accident no one saw coming. It was May 2nd, 2018. Prabhu Bhattara, a middle-aged taxi driver from Odisha, India, was driving 2 customers home from a wedding when he saw something he considered worth inspecting closer, an injured bear. Prabhu made a fatal decision that would soon become a grim reminder of the dangers of human recklessness in the presence of wildlife. What began as a routine drive home from a wedding ended in tragedy when an ill-fated attempt to capture a photograph cost him everything. On the evening of the incident, Prabhu was transporting passengers in his SUV when he stopped in a forested area of the Nabarangpur district to relieve himself. As he stepped away from the vehicle, he noticed a bear near a pond. The animal, believed to be injured, was resting, possibly in distress. Rather than keeping his distance, Prabhu made the fatal choice to approach it, determined to take a selfie. His passengers, who watched from the vehicle, realized what Prabhu wanted to do and warned him against getting too close. But Prabhu had already decided. He chose to ignore their protests and he moved toward the bear, phone in hand. He was ready for a selfie with the injured creature. What followed was swift and brutal. The bear, sensing a potential threat, reacted with its natural fight instinct. As Prabhu attempted to position himself near the animal, he slipped. In that instant, the bear seized the opportunity and lunged. With powerful swipes of its claws, it dragged him down, biting and clawing at him as he struggled to escape. Witnesses, including his passengers, could do nothing but watch in horror. Some attempted to intervene from a distance, shouting and throwing objects in a desperate attempt to distract the bear. Even a stray dog tried to save Prabhu. The dog rushed at the predator, barking and attempting to bite it, but the bear remained undeterred. Within moments, Prabhu Batra succumbed to the attack, while bystanders filmed the attack. His injuries were severe, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. Authorities later arrived to secure the area, but there was nothing that could be done to save him. The bear had to be tranquilized in order for Prabhu's body to be retrieved. It is believed that the bear involved in the attack was a sloth bear, a species known for its aggressive nature, especially when dealing with humans. Sloth bears are native to the Indian subcontinent and are one of the most dangerous bear species when it comes to human encounters. Unlike other bears that typically avoid confrontation, sloth bears are known to react defensively, often attacking humans who venture too close. Their aggression is largely due to their instinctive response to perceived threats, much like their reaction to natural predators such as tigers and leopards. Due to their habitat overlapping with densely populated areas, sloth bear attacks in India are not uncommon, with many cases resulting in severe injury or death. Prabhu's death was the third selfie-related fatality in the Odisha region within months, underscoring the growing trend of risky behavior in pursuit of social media content. Previous incidents involved individuals attempting to take selfies with wild elephants, with similarly fatal consequences. India has recorded the highest number of selfie-related deaths in the world, with many incidents occurring in dangerous locations or involving risky interactions with wildlife. The incident serves as a tragic warning about the consequences of disregarding safety around wild animals. Prabhu's decision to approach the injured bear, despite clear warnings and the visible signs of danger, ultimately cost him his life. His death is yet another reminder of the fatal consequences of underestimating the instincts of wild animals. In 2024, Cynthia Nayeli Higuereta Bermejo was a young model seeking to capture a thrilling and unusual photo, but her ambition and her passion for modeling cost her everything. What was meant to be an artistic and striking photo shoot turned fatal within seconds, leaving witnesses in shock and raising serious concerns about the dangers of taking risks, even in pursuit of art. At 30 years old, Cynthia Nayeli Higuereta Bermejo was a Venezuelan model who had been living in Tlajomulco de Zuniga, Mexico. Passionate about photography and modeling, she often took part in photo sessions designed to create dramatic and visually striking images. On this particular day, she had planned a shoot that would incorporate a fast-moving train as the backdrop, hoping to capture a sense of power and motion in the final images. The photo shoot took place in Zacoalco de Torres, a town near Guadalajara in western Mexico. Accompanied by a photographer and several other individuals, Cynthia stood near the railway tracks as they set up the shot. The idea was to position her close enough to the passing train to create a dramatic effect without actually stepping onto the tracks. As the locomotive approached at more than 180 kilometers per hour, she continued to pose, believing she was at a safe distance. But Cynthia was gravely mistaken. As she posed, the train thundered past. It all happened in a flash. The sheer force of the train's movement created a powerful air current. This sudden pull was strong enough to catch hold of Cynthia's clothing, dragging her violently under the train. The impact was immediate and devastating. Cynthia's team could do nothing but watch in horror as the accident unfolded in a matter of seconds. To try and help her would have been a death sentence. They quickly called for help. Emergency services arrived quickly, but there was nothing they could do. Cynthia had died instantly, her life cut tragically short by her passion. Her body was found just a few centimeters from the tracks, alongside a tripod and other photography equipment. Authorities immediately launched an investigation, collecting statements from those present at the shoot to piece together the sequence of events leading to the tragic accident. Jalisco State Prosecutor Joaquin Mendez Ruiz confirmed that Cynthia's death appeared to be a terrible accident. Based on witness accounts, it was determined that Cynthia had miscalculated the safe distance required to avoid the train's powerful slipstream. The force had been strong enough to entangle her clothing, pulling her into the locomotive's path and causing fatal injuries. Her remains were taken from the tracks and sent for an autopsy before being handed over to her family for burial. The investigation into the circumstances surrounding her death remains ongoing, but authorities have not indicated any foul play. Cynthia's death serves as a grim reminder of the dangers associated with taking risks near railway tracks. While photo shoots in unconventional locations have become increasingly popular, particularly in the age of social media, they come with serious hazards. Her tragic passing is not the first of its kind. Around the world, accidents involving individuals attempting to take dramatic photographs or selfies near moving trains have led to similar fatal outcomes. Despite repeated warnings from railway authorities and safety campaigns emphasizing the dangers of standing too close to tracks, Many continue to underestimate the risks. What began as an attempt to create a compelling image ended in a devastating loss. Cynthia's story serves as a cautionary tale about the fine line between artistic ambition and personal safety. Her death highlights the critical need for awareness and responsibility when working in hazardous environments, ensuring that no photograph is ever worth the ultimate price. On October 26, 2024, Amanda Gallagher was doing what she loved, capturing moments of exhilaration and adventure, when an unimaginable accident occurred. The 37-year-old professional photographer from Wichita, Kansas, was at Cook Airfield in Darby, documenting skydivers as they boarded and landed from their jumps. Her passion for both photography and skydiving had led her to this moment, but in a tragic turn of events, a routine day at the airfield ended in devastation. Amanda had built a reputation as a talented and creative photographer. Friends described her as kind, adventurous, and full of life, always eager to embrace new experiences. Recently, she had discovered skydiving and quickly became enamored with the sport, sharing her excitement online. Just weeks before the accident, she had completed her first solo jump, calling it the best feeling ever. Her newfound love for skydiving complemented her photography, allowing her to capture breathtaking images of others experiencing the thrill of freefall. On that fateful afternoon, Amanda was at Air Capital Drop Zone, an event held at Cook Airfield, documenting skydivers as they prepared for their jumps. She had been on board a Cessna 182 photographing a group of jumpers. After they exited the aircraft, she remained inside and rode the plane back to the ground. Once the plane landed, the next group of skydivers began boarding. It was during this transition that the accident occurred. The Cessna 182 remained grounded but was still running, with its propeller spinning. According to the Air Capital Drop Zone, Amanda, with her camera raised to take a shot, moved forward and stepped past the wing, an area she should not have entered. While focusing on her photography, she unknowingly stepped back and made contact with the moving propeller. The consequences were devastating. Amanda was gravely injured. Emergency responders were called to the airfield at approximately 2:40 p.m. Amanda sustained critical injuries and was quickly transported to Wesley Medical Center by air ambulance. Despite efforts to save her, she succumbed to her injuries. Her death left the skydiving and photography communities in shock. Friends, colleagues, and fellow skydivers took to social media to express their grief, remembering her as a talented artist and a warm, gentle presence. A GoFundMe campaign was launched to assist her family with funeral expenses, raising thousands of dollars as people came together to honor her memory. The accident also led to discussions about safety procedures at airfields. Moving into the path of an active propeller is a well-known hazard, and the incident raised questions about how such a tragedy could have been prevented. While some mourners focused on Amanda's life and legacy, others empathized with the pilot who had been at the controls of the aircraft, recognizing the trauma of witnessing such an event. Authorities, including the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office, the Federal Aviation Administration, and the National Transportation Safety Board, launched an investigation into the circumstances surrounding Amanda's death. Statements from the Air Capital Drop Zone emphasized that stepping in front of the wing was a violation of basic safety protocols, though it remained unclear what had caused her to move in that direction. Though her life was cut short, Amanda left behind a legacy of passion and creativity. Her photographs captured moments of joy, freedom, and adventure, expressions of a life well lived. Those who knew her continue to remember her not only for her talent, but for her warmth, kindness, and fearless pursuit of the things that made her happiest.
It was October 10, 2014 in Rhyl, Wales, when 75-year-old Vera Williams, who lived at Lees Tudor, faced a tragic chain of events that began with a simple breakfast. That morning she was eating toast when a sharp fragment became lodged in her throat, causing immediate discomfort. However, it seemed like a minor issue, which began a devastating turn of events. Vera, who had a history of severe heart disease, visited the accident and emergency unit at Isbiti Glan CLW WID, reporting pain in her throat. She was seen by junior doctor Noor Ismail, who assessed her condition and found no signs of serious illness. Without further tests, Vera was sent home. Over the next 2 weeks, the pain in Vera's throat persisted, but she didn't immediately seek further medical help. On October 23rd, she returned to the hospital and was examined by Dr. Adedeji Adeleke. She mentioned pain in her neck but didn't explain that it had been continuous since her initial visit. Without understanding the full scope of her symptoms, Dr. Adeleke suspected an infection, prescribed antibiotics, and discharged her the following day. The real issue, however, remained undetected. On October 24th, Vera's condition worsened dramatically. She began coughing up blood and was rushed to the hospital. Doctors conducted a thorough examination, including a CT scan, which revealed that the sharp piece of toast had torn her esophagus, leading to a rupture, a rare and serious condition known as an esophageal perforation. This injury had caused blood to leak into her intestines, explaining her symptoms and recent bleeding. Esophageal tears are exceptionally rare, occurring in about 3 cases per million people. Unfortunately, the delay in identifying the problem left limited treatment options. Due to Vera's severe heart condition, surgery, the most effective solution, was deemed too risky. Her medical team focused on managing her condition, but despite their efforts, Vera's health declined rapidly. She passed away a few days later. Vera's death led to a review to determine if earlier detection or intervention could have changed the outcome. The inquest highlighted the challenges faced by the medical team. Dr. Marion Hughes, a senior consultant in emergency medicine, reviewed the case and stated that the doctors acted appropriately based on the information available at the time. She noted that esophageal tears were so rare that most doctors wouldn't suspect them without clear signs. With nearly 40 years of experience, Dr. Hughes admitted she had never encountered such a case. However, the inquest also highlighted systemic issues in the hospital's operations. At the time, İspiti Glancialwid used paper records, which made it harder for doctors to track patients' medical histories. Coroner Nicola Jones suggested that if electronic records had been in place, Dr. Adeleke might have been better informed about Vera's earlier visit. This could have raised suspicions about a more serious issue. Still, it's being determined whether, even with better records, the outcome would have been different, given Vera's pre-existing health problems. The case of Vera Williams is a heartbreaking example of how an everyday activity, like eating breakfast, can unexpectedly lead to severe consequences. Her story also highlights the importance of clear communication between patients and doctors. If Vera had mentioned the ongoing nature of her symptoms during her second visit, it would have led to more thorough investigations. Ultimately, her death was caused by a rare and unforeseen medical condition. While the doctors involved acted based on the information they had, the tragedy underscores the need for improved systems to ensure patients' histories are accessible and considered during treatment. It was July 20th, 2022, in Mumbai, India, a city teeming with life. For 27-year-old Rekha Nishad, life wasn't without struggles, but she faced them with resilience. She lived in a modest home in Malad West Pascal Wadi area with her husband and brother-in-law. The family led a simple life, managing the everyday challenges of urban living. For weeks, their home had been plagued by a persistent rat problem. Determined to address it, Rekha came up with what she believed was an effective solution. She injected poison into a few tomatoes, intending to use them as bait for the pests. That evening, Rekha returned home after a tiring day. Hoping for a quick and comforting meal, she prepared instant noodles. Her favorite TV show played in the background as she cooked, providing a rare moment of relaxation. Distracted by the show, Rekha accidentally picked up one poisoned tomato and added it to her noodles. Oblivious to the danger, she stirred the pot and finished cooking. Rekha sat down to eat, unaware of the mistake. After her meal, she began to feel unwell. At first, she thought it was an upset stomach, perhaps from something else she had eaten. However, her symptoms rapidly worsened, with intense nausea and severe discomfort setting in. Her husband and brother-in-law soon realized the seriousness of her condition and rushed her to Shatabdi Hospital. Despite the doctor's efforts, the damage from the poison was too extensive. Rekha's health deteriorated rapidly, and on July 22nd, just 2 days after the incident, she passed away. Her sudden death left her family devastated. The police launched an investigation into the tragedy. Rekha had managed to explain what had happened before her condition worsened. She told authorities that she had poisoned the tomatoes for the rats and accidentally used one while cooking. The police found no evidence of foul play and concluded that her death was a tragic accident. The case was closed with an accidental death report. This heartbreaking incident highlights how quickly a simple mistake can lead to catastrophic consequences. It is a caution about the dangers of handling toxic substances at home. Just a month later, Mumbai saw another similar tragedy. On August 13th, 24-year-old Kajol Pawar, who lived in Andheri East's Saki Naka area, accidentally consumed rat poison, mistaking it for medicine for a stomachache. Kajol was home alone when the incident occurred. Realizing her mistake, she called her mother, Ananda Gavane, for help, explaining her symptoms and pleading for assistance. Her mother and brother rushed to her side and took her to a nearby private hospital. However, her condition required specialized care. 2 days later, she was transferred to Hiranandani Hospital, where doctors discovered severe liver damage caused by the poison. As her health continued to decline, Kajol was moved to Kem Hospital in Parel for further treatment. Despite the medical team's best efforts, Kajol's body couldn't recover from the internal damage. 6 days after the incident, on August 19th, she passed away. Her husband, Abhishek Pawar, who had been on a trekking trip at the time, returned to the devastating news of her death. The police confirmed that Kajol's death was also accidental, with no signs of foul play. Like Rekha's case, her passing was a grim reminder of how dangerous toxic substances can be if handled carelessly. These two incidents reveal the severe risks of keeping hazardous materials at home and the devastating consequences of even a moment's distraction. Both Rekha's and Kajol's stories emphasize the need for caution and awareness when dealing with such substances, as even the best intentions can lead to tragic outcomes.
July 2019 in Erzurum, Turkey. 24-year-old Zafer Kuzu had recently been convicted of causing harm to another person. Instead of prison, he was sentenced to community service, something that, while inconvenient, wasn't a severe punishment. But for Zafer, even this was too much. Determined to escape it, he came up with a reckless plan, one that would ultimately cost him his life. Zafer didn't want to complete his sentence. Instead, he convinced himself that if he were injured badly enough, he could avoid it altogether. His idea? To stage an accident that would send him to the hospital. It wasn't a well-thought-out plan, but it was one he was willing to go through with. He wasn't alone. Two of his friends, an 18-year-old known as FY and another friend called FYT, agreed to help. The plan was simple but dangerous. Zafer would strap 2 pillows to his back to soften the impact, and one of his friends would shoot him with a shotgun at close range. The hope was that the blast would leave him injured, just enough to land him in a hospital bed, but not enough to cause real harm. But things did not go as planned. A shotgun doesn't fire a single bullet. It shoots multiple pellets at once, spreading out as they travel. Even with pillows as makeshift protection, Zafer was putting himself in serious danger. When FY pulled the trigger, the force of the blast tore through the fabric, completely bypassing the so-called padding. The impact was devastating. Zafer collapsed in pain. His friends, realizing the situation had gone horribly wrong, panicked. They rushed to help him, trying to get him medical attention, but it was too late. Before they could even leave the house, Zafer had succumbed to his injuries. Authorities were called to the scene shortly after. When police arrived, they detained both friends. FY, the one who fired the shotgun, was immediately arrested, while FYT was taken into custody for questioning. The shotgun was seized, and Zafer's body was sent to a forensic institute in Istanbul for an autopsy. During the investigation, details of the bizarre plan emerged. It became clear that Zafer had believed this was a way out of his punishment. Instead, his attempt to escape responsibility had led to an irreversible outcome. In court, FY faced legal consequences for his role in the incident. He was charged and placed in custody while proceedings took place. Meanwhile, FYT was released on bail, but remained under investigation. Zafer's story left many in shock. It was hard to understand why he would go to such extreme lengths to avoid something as minor as community service. His decision to stage an injury had not only failed, but had taken his life in the process. For his two friends, the reality of what had happened weighed heavily. What had started as a foolish plan had turned into something far more serious. They now had to live with the knowledge that their involvement had contributed to a tragic loss. Zafer's death was an unfortunate reminder that reckless decisions can have permanent consequences. He had sought a way out, but instead he had created a situation with no way back. His story, though unusual, serves as an example of how desperation can push people to make choices that lead to disaster. December 12, 2021, a quiet Sunday afternoon in Jaipur, India. Mohsin, a 29-year-old man from Uttar Pradesh, had been living in the city for 2 years with his partner and her young daughter. But this wasn't a typical relationship. The woman had left her husband and eloped with Mohsin, cutting ties with her past life. Since then, her husband had been searching for her, determined to find her and their child. That day, his search came to an end. The husband arrived at the apartment where Mohsin and his wife had been living. What exactly was said inside remains unclear, but the moment Mohsin saw him, he panicked. For 2 years, he had been avoiding this confrontation, and now, with nowhere to hide, he made a desperate decision. Instead of facing the situation, he ran to the balcony and jumped from the 5th floor. The fall was devastating. Mohsin landed hard, suffering critical injuries. His partner, who had witnessed everything, immediately rushed him to SMS Government Hospital, hoping he would survive. But the damage was too severe. That night, Mohsin succumbed to his injuries. The next day, his body was sent for a post-mortem examination before being handed over to his family. But the story didn't end there. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the woman and her husband disappeared. No one knew where they had gone, and authorities were unable to track them down. Their sudden vanishing only deepened the mystery surrounding the case. Investigators determined that Mohsin's reaction had been driven by fear. Rather than facing a confrontation, he had acted on impulse, making a choice that ultimately cost him his life. In the days leading up to the incident, Mohsin and the woman had moved into a new apartment near NRI Circle, hoping for a fresh start. But whatever peace they had found was short-lived. Police confirmed that the woman's husband had never stopped looking for her. When he finally found her, things took a turn no one had expected. Instead of a conversation, fear and panic took control, leading to a tragic end. Mohsin's family was left in shock. They struggled to understand why he had made such a desperate choice. Their grief was compounded by the unanswered questions surrounding his final moments. Meanwhile, authorities continued searching for the woman and her husband, but their whereabouts remained unknown. Mohsin's story is one of fear, impulsive decisions, and an unresolved mystery. His attempt to escape a difficult situation only led to devastating consequences. And with the key figures in the story now missing, the full truth may never come to light. 4th, 2012 at the Pittsburgh Zoo and PPG Aquarium. 2-year-old Maddox Lamar Durkosh was visiting the zoo with his parents, Jason and Elizabeth. The family stopped at the African painted dog exhibit, a popular attraction featuring a raised viewing platform where visitors could look down into the enclosure. While designed to provide a good view, this platform had risks, especially for small children. Wanting Maddox to see the animals better, Elizabeth lifted him onto the 4-foot-high railing. Despite posted warnings about safety, it was common for parents to hold their kids up for a better look. As she held him, Maddox lost his balance and slipped from her grasp. He fell 14 feet, missing the safety net below, which was only meant to catch small objects, not a child. He landed in the middle of the enclosure, right among the 11 wild dogs. The situation turned horrific almost instantly. The animals reacted to Maddox's fall, and despite zoo staff responding quickly, they were unable to reach him in time. A police officer fired a shot at one of the dogs in an attempt to stop the attack, but it was too late. Maddox had suffered fatal injuries. A veterinarian on the scene confirmed that there was nothing that could be done. The incident left everyone in shock. The exhibit was immediately closed, and the zoo contained the remaining animals. In the aftermath, the Durkosh family was devastated, and the tragedy sparked both legal and emotional battles. Elizabeth faced harsh criticism for lifting Maddox onto the railing, but authorities ultimately decided not to press charges. Allegheny County District Attorney Stephen A. Zappala Jr. ruled the event as a tragic accident. Still, the family pursued legal action against the zoo, arguing that it had failed to address safety concerns. Documents revealed that the zoo had known about the dangers of the exhibit since at least 2006. Staff had previously observed parents holding children over the railing, raising concerns that an accident could happen. However, no changes had been made. Despite this, the Pittsburgh Zoo insisted that the exhibit met all required safety standards and had passed 35 federal inspections since it opened. Public opinion was divided. Some blamed the zoo for not taking action after repeated safety warnings, while others argued that Maddox's mother should have been more cautious. The case was eventually settled out of court, with the terms remaining confidential. Following the tragedy, the zoo made changes. The viewing platform where Maddox had fallen was removed, and the African-painted dogs were relocated to other facilities. The exhibit was later replaced with a new one featuring cheetahs, but criticism remained, particularly regarding how the zoo handled the situation. Many felt it unfairly placed the blame on Elizabeth, who was already grieving the loss of her child. Despite their grief, Maddox's parents found a way to honor his memory. Since he loved toy trucks, the family started a donation drive, collecting toy trucks to give to children in need during the holiday season. The initiative touched many hearts, and thousands of people from across the country participated, ensuring that Maddox's love for trucks lived on in a meaningful way. While nothing could undo the tragedy, the incident led to broader discussions about safety in public spaces. It also raised difficult questions about responsibility, whether institutions like zoos should do more to prevent accidents, and how families navigate the unthinkable loss of a child. Maddox's story is one of immense sorrow, but his family has worked to keep his memory alive. Through their efforts, they not only bring joy to other children, but also remind others of the importance of safety, awareness, and the lasting impact of a single moment. November 28, 1981, Daniel Dutoit, a 63-year-old esteemed South African astronomer, stood before an audience to deliver a lecture. The topic was a somber one: the unpredictability of life and its natural companion, death. With this lecture on the unpredictable arrival of man's mortality came an unbelievable and tragic demonstration. Born on December 15, 1917 in Springfontein, South Africa, Daniel Stephanus Dutoit had an early fascination with the heavens. He pursued his education at Hoërskool Centraal in Bloemfontein before embarking on his astronomical journey in 1936 at the Boyden Observatory, then administered by Harvard College Observatory. Dutoit eventually became the chief assistant to the director of the observatory. The observatory, located in Mazelsport Free State, served as a fertile ground for remarkable astronomical discoveries during that era. Dutoit's contributions to the field of astronomy were nothing short of extraordinary, particularly in the discovery of comets. Between 1941 and 1945, he discovered 5 comets, a feat that solidified his reputation among his peers. The first of these, 57P/Dutoit-Nurmin-Delport, was found during the meticulous examination of photographic plates taken using the observatory's telescopes. This process involved painstakingly scanning images exposed on high-speed blue plates, ensuring the quality and accuracy of each observation. His subsequent discoveries included 66P/Dutoit and 79P/Dutoit-Hartley, both of which continued to be of interest to modern astronomers. Comet 79P, for instance, has undergone significant changes since its discovery in 1945, including the fragmentation of its nucleus, which led to its rediscovery in 1982 after years of uncertainty. After World War II, in 1946, Dutoit shifted his career path, leaving the observatory for work in the building industry. Despite this transition, his legacy in astronomy remained. However, life dealt him a difficult hand when an accident forced him into early retirement after he lost a leg. Yet it was not a tragic injury, or even the peril of his earlier stargazing that claimed him. Instead, the twist of fate came in the simplest form: a peppermint. Dutoit's reputation as a significant astronomer persisted. On September 29, 1981, the 63-year-old former astronomer was delivering a lecture. It was a heavy topic, focusing on life's unpredictability. As he concluded his thought-provoking address, he left the audience with a chilling reminder that death could come at any time. But as the audience sat with this somber warning, Dutoit engaged in a mundane activity. What followed next was an act almost too surreal and ironic to believe. The former astronomer unwrapped a piece of peppermint candy and popped it into his mouth. He instantly began to choke. Despite immediate attempts to save him, the mint became lodged in his throat, cutting short his life in a sudden and dramatic twist that mirrored the very theme he had just discussed. The circumstances surrounding Daniel Dutoit's death evoked both shock and a sense of bitter irony. Here was a man who spent years uncovering the mysteries of the cosmos, tracing paths of comets as they traversed the endless expanse of space. In his final moments, as if scripted by fate itself, he embodied the very truth he spoke. It was ironic that his demise was brought about by a humble mint, which truly illustrated his last words. In 2002, Guillermo López Langarica, widely known as El Kanaka, was arrested for driving under the influence in Guadalajara, Mexico. But his story didn't end there. That day, a drunk López Langarica gave a hilarious interview. Years later, in 2007, the interview became viral on YouTube due to the man's eccentric behavior and memorable phrases that resonated with audiences. The video spread like wildfire, garnering millions of views and catapulting López Langarica into the limelight. But the man's fame was short-lived. A year later, his life tragically ended in another drunken accident. In the 2002 video, López Langarica, in an alcohol-induced state, vehemently protested his arrest, insisting that, although he was indeed driving under the influence, he hadn't been in an accident. He accused the police of stealing 50,000 pesos and declared himself the son of a supposed high-ranking official, the president of an organization he called Kanaka, which didn't exist. His claims were, however, unfounded and even absurd, but coupled with his slurred yet passionate delivery, they struck a chord with viewers, turning lines like, "Write this down," and "They tied me like a pig" instant classics within Mexican internet culture during the era of the so-called old internet. Despite this newfound fame, López Langarica remained a figure whose life was marked by hardships and contradictions. He was known as a good-natured cynic, a chatterbox, a party-goer, and someone who loved sports. Yet the viral fame that brought him recognition was something he never fully embraced. He disliked being approached by strangers seeking autographs and regretted the infamy that followed him. On September 25, 2008, just a year after he achieved fame, the unexpected occurred. López Langarica was run over by a heavily intoxicated driver, a woman named Silvia Teresa Borbón Valenzuela, in Guadalajara. The accident was as sudden as it was tragic. López Langarica, who had faced public scrutiny and laughter for his drunken antics, was ironically sober at the time of his death. The driver's bizarre claim that someone had placed the body under her car added an unsettling element to the incident, but it did not alter the grim reality. López Langarica died on the scene, his life ending in an instant under bitterly ironic circumstances. The accident made national news, sparking shock and debate. For many, the tragic twist was too obvious to ignore. A man who rose to fame for his comical, intoxicated confrontation with the police was killed by an intoxicated driver. This unexpected and twisted end was yet another proof of the cruel unpredictability of fate, an irony that left many speechless. Tributes flooded social media and YouTube, where users posted farewell messages and shared the video that had initially brought him fame. T-shirts with his catchphrases and other memorabilia appeared in markets, cementing his status as a part of Mexican pop culture. His legacy, encapsulated in parodies, remixes, and references, became both a source of laughter and reflection. He was immortalized as San Kanaka by some, with claims of ghostly apparitions adding a surreal conclusion to his tale. López Langarica, the man who was tied like a pig and claimed as the son of the president of Kanaka, served as a reminder of how easily the lines between humor and tragedy could blur. Behind the viral clips and humorous anecdotes was a man who lived, struggled, and ultimately met an untimely end. Known as the guru of running, James Fuller Fix devoted his life to promoting the health benefits of jogging and was credited with helping ignite America's fitness revolution in the 1970s. Yet his death was marked by an irony that resonated deeply with the public and sparked debates in the medical and fitness communities, an unforeseen conclusion that seemed to challenge everything he had stood for. Born on April 23, 1932 in New York City, Fix graduated from Trinity School and Oberlin College. His father, Calvin Fix, was an editor at Time magazine. Despite his intellectual background, Fix's early life was not marked by health or athleticism. In fact, up until his mid-30s, Fix led an unhealthy lifestyle. He smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day, indulged in rich foods, and weighed 214 pounds. The turning point came at age 35 when he decided to overhaul his habits and create a very different life for himself. As a result, he quit smoking and started running. The result was astonishing. Within a few years, Fix transformed himself into a paragon of fitness. He lost over 60 pounds, built a lean physique, and began running up to 80 miles a week, participating in marathons, and inspiring countless others through his example. In 1977, he published The Complete Book of Running, which became an instant bestseller and solidified his reputation as an advocate for the power of physical fitness. Fix was credited as one of the creators of the fitness movement in America. The Complete Book of Running sold over 1 million copies. The content of the book highlighted the benefits of running and declared that regular exercise could significantly extend life expectancy. Fix spent the following years of his life writing and speaking passionately about the benefits of exercise, arguing that an active lifestyle was key to a long and healthy life. Fix's beliefs, however, were built on a strong conviction that exercise alone was sufficient protection against heart disease. He often cited theories that marathon runners developed immunity from heart issues and downplayed the importance of diet. Although Fix knew that his father had died of a heart attack at the age of 43 after an earlier attack at 35, he trusted that running and abstaining from smoking would safeguard him from the same fate. He did not routinely seek medical checkups and reportedly refused cardiovascular stress tests, even when advised by friends and experts. His refusal to know the exact state of his health might have pointed to an underlying fear. Maybe Fix suspected he wasn't as healthy as he wanted to be, and maybe he was afraid to find out for sure. On July 20th, 1984, Fix, aged 52, set out for his daily run along Vermont Route 15 in Hardwick. Partway through, he collapsed and died beside the road. A passing motorcyclist discovered his lifeless body beside the road. An autopsy performed by Vermont's chief medical examiner, Dr. Eleanor McQuillan, revealed that Fix had severe atherosclerosis. His coronary arteries were significantly blocked. One artery was 95% obstructed, another 85%, and a third 70%. Despite his dedication to running and apparent physical fitness, the underlying disease had progressed undetected, leading to a sudden and fatal heart attack. The revelation of Fix's blocked arteries raised questions about the beliefs he had championed. While his transformation from an unhealthy smoker to a fitness icon had inspired many, the fact that he died while practicing what he preached was an ionic contradiction. His death came to show that exercise, while beneficial, was not a cure-all. Factors such as genetics, diet, and comprehensive medical care also played critical roles. In the years following his death, Kenneth Cooper, an exercise physiologist and friend of Fix, conducted a review of his medical history and risk factors. Cooper's findings confirmed that Fix's genetic predisposition, his father's early death from heart disease, combined with his history of smoking and high levels of stress, as well as his somewhat deficient nutrition, contributed significantly to his fatal condition. Cooper speculated that even though running might have extended Fix's life beyond what it might have been otherwise, it could not overcome the advanced state of his heart disease. Despite the tragic end, Jim Fix's legacy endures. He helped Americans understand that running and jogging were vital parts of a healthy lifestyle. While exercise remains a powerful tool for improving physical and mental well-being, Fix's death reminds us that it must be complemented by awareness of genetic risks, proper medical screenings, and a holistic approach to health. He thought he'd gotten away with murder, literally. But just as Joseph McKinnon was finishing what he started, something else happened. Something far beyond his control. In the end, it wasn't law enforcement or neighbors who stopped him. It was karma arriving swiftly and without mercy. 60-year-old Joseph McKinnon lived in the quiet town of Trenton, South Carolina, with his longtime partner, Patricia Ruth Dent, age 65. A relatively unremarkable presence in the small community, Joseph gave little reason for suspicion. There were no known incidents of domestic violence at their residence, no calls to police, and no red flags that would hint at the grim events that would unfold one Saturday morning in May. That morning, as neighbors saw Joseph working in the yard, few gave it a second thought. He told one of them the hole he was digging was for a water feature. But in truth, the real reason behind the freshly dug pit was far more sinister. As Saturday progressed, Patricia failed to report to her job at the Mount Vintage Golf Course. Known for her reliability, her absence triggered immediate concern. Co-workers began calling and texting as early as 7:30 a.m., but none of their messages were answered. Meanwhile, outside her home, Joseph continued working over the grave he had dug the day before. According to the investigation conducted by the Edgefield County Sheriff's Office, Joseph had attacked Patricia inside their shared home. There were signs of a struggle, blood evidence later confirmed to be hers, and signs that the house had recently been cleaned. Patricia had been struck in the face, though the autopsy later confirmed that her cause of death was strangulation. After killing her, Joseph bound her body with tape, wrapped it in black trash bags, and dragged it through the home to his truck, which remained parked in the yard. From there, he drove the body to the back garden where the shallow pit awaited. Joseph was nearly done burying Patricia when everything unraveled. Neighbors noticed him lying motionless in the yard just before 10 a.m., prompting a call to emergency services. A neighbor attempted chest compressions before first responders arrived, but by the time deputies and medical crews reached the scene, Joseph was already dead. With no immediate signs of trauma, authorities initially suspected a natural cause, later confirmed to be a cardiac event, an apparent heart attack. But the investigation didn't end there. With Patricia still unaccounted for, deputies began searching the property more thoroughly. That's when they uncovered the trash bags in the freshly filled grave. The bags were carefully unwrapped, and Patricia's body was found inside, bound and hidden beneath the soil Joseph had been feverishly shoveling before collapsing. The discovery prompted a full forensic investigation. The pit, the truck, the cleaned house, and the timeline all aligned with witness statements, enabling law enforcement to piece together the final hours of the couple's lives. The results of both autopsies solidified what investigators had already suspected. Joseph had murdered Patricia, then died while attempting to hide her body. For the town of Trenton, a place with a population of barely 200, the incident was deeply unsettling. Residents expressed shock, unease, and sorrow. Some worried about safety, while others struggled to comprehend how something so brutal could happen right next door. Among those devastated was Patricia's twin sister, Pamela Briggs, who described her sibling as energetic, kind, and beloved by everyone she met. According to Pamela, a part of her was gone forever, taken in a moment of violence no one had seen coming. In the end, Joseph McKinnon's attempt to cover up a murder was halted not by intervention, but by the failure of his own heart. What began as a daring and heartfelt mission to raise funds for a noble cause ended in tragedy, when a Brazilian priest's attempt to bring attention to a project close to his heart backfired in a way no one could have foreseen. In April 2008, Adelir Antonio de Carli, 41, was a Roman Catholic priest widely known in Brazil as the Balloon Priest. He was born on February 8, 1967, and raised under difficult circumstances. Following his parents' divorce, Adelir lived with his mother in Paraguay until her death when he was just 15. Returning to Brazil, he worked various jobs, first as a tire repairman alongside his father, then at his uncle's gas station, and also painting tablecloths to make ends meet. Despite his humble beginnings, he was an excellent student and known for his quiet demeanor. Unexpectedly, he joined a seminary in Paranagua and was ordained in August 2003. By 2004, he had become head of his own parish, where he developed a deep commitment to social work. One of Adelir's major undertakings was the creation of the Pastoral, a rest and spiritual support area for truckers passing through the port city of Paranagua. He held masses in the port's patio and took an active role in defending the rights of marginalized citizens, including the homeless. His activism led to multiple arrests, including the city's municipal security secretary. The same year, he protested the removal of small diners from the port area, successfully halting their eviction. Seeking to raise awareness and funding for the Pastoral, Adelir planned to break the world record for cluster balloon flight time, 19 hours suspended in the air. Although he took survival and mountain climbing courses in preparation, his history with aviation was uneven. He had previously been expelled from a paragliding course in Curitiba for refusing to attend theory classes and disobeying his instructor. Still, in January 2008, he completed a successful 4-hour flight from Ampere to Argentina using 600 balloons and reaching an altitude of over 17,000 feet. On April 20, 2008, Adelir made his second and final attempt. After celebrating Mass that morning, he lifted off from Paranagua in a chair strapped to 1,000 brightly colored balloons. Though the weather was rainy and overcast, he pressed forward equipped with a parachute, waterproof gear, a global positioning system, satellite and mobile phone, a flotation device, and enough food and water for 5 days. His intended destination was Dourados, over 700 kilometers away, where his brother Marcos lived. Early on, he ascended much higher than expected, reportedly up to 19,000 or even 20,000 feet. 8 hours into the flight and about 30 miles off the coast, he contacted the Paranagua Port Authority and passed along his coordinates. He also reported being very cold and struggling with his global positioning system. It was his last known communication. That night, search operations began involving the Brazilian Navy, Air Force, and local firefighters. Although debris from the balloon cluster was found floating in the ocean days later, the search was called off by April 29th as hopes of finding him alive faded. It wasn't until July 4th, 2008, that the lower half of a human body was spotted by tugboat workers roughly 100 kilometers from the city of Mackay. Based on the clothing and other materials, authorities suspected it was Adelir. Deoxyribonucleic acid tests confirmed the identity weeks later. His remains were returned to Paranagua, where churchgoers greeted him with applause. A memorial mass was held in his honor, and he was buried in a special chapel. Though his life ended in tragedy, Adelir's legacy lived on, marked by a bold attempt to serve his community. He was December 2002 in New York City. Sean Doyle, a bartender, was out for a night of drinks with his friend Michael Wright and Wright's girlfriend. What started as a casual evening quickly took a dark turn. As the night went on, Michael became convinced that Sean was flirting with his girlfriend. Whether fueled by alcohol or deep-seated jealousy, his frustration grew into something far worse. At some point, the argument escalated into a physical fight. Witnesses recalled Sean shouting, "No, don't break my legs," before things spiraled beyond control. In a fit of rage, Michael did something unthinkable. He shoved Sean into an open manhole on the street. The drop was about 18 feet, but the real danger wasn't the fall itself. Below was a flooded steam tunnel filled with scalding water that had reached deadly temperatures. A broken steam main had turned the space beneath the city streets into a boiling death trap. What makes this even more horrifying is that Sean didn't die immediately. He survived the fall and was still standing when emergency crews arrived. From below, his screams echoed up the tunnel as he begged for help, but no one could reach him. The heat inside was unbearable. Firefighters and paramedics tried everything, but the steam was too intense. The temperature in the tunnel exceeded 300 degrees Fahrenheit, and the water was hot enough to inflict extreme burns within seconds. No one could go down without risking their own life. For 4 agonizing hours, Sean remained trapped. He was fully conscious, feeling the intense heat as the boiling water slowly consumed him. When his body was finally recovered, forensic experts discovered that the temperature readings taken from his remains had reached 125 degrees Fahrenheit. But this was only as high as the measuring device could go. In reality, it was likely much hotter. Dr. Judy Melinek, the forensic pathologist who examined Sean's remains, described his injuries in haunting detail. His skin had peeled away, and his internal organs were damaged beyond recognition from the extreme heat. Despite the horrific burns, there were no broken bones or major head trauma. This meant Sean had been fully aware of what was happening to him as he suffered. Dr. Melinek later admitted that this case was the one that haunted her the most. When people asked her about the worst way a person could go, she would often reply, "You don't want to know." But when pressed, she would describe Sean's final moments, the pain, the heat, and the helplessness he must have felt. The emotional weight of his suffering is almost impossible to comprehend. This wasn't just an accident or an act of reckless violence. It was a drawn-out, horrifying ordeal that left a lasting mark on everyone who heard about it. Michael Wright was later arrested and charged. While his girlfriend claimed the situation got out of control, the court saw it differently. Throwing someone into a steam-filled tunnel wasn't an accident. It was an intentional act that ended in an unimaginable way. New York City is no stranger to tragedy, but Sean Doyle's death remains one of the most disturbing in recent history. It wasn't just the violence of the attack that shocked people. It was the suffering that followed. His story is a chilling example of how quickly an argument can escalate, and how some dangers hidden beneath the surface can be far worse than anyone realizes. Michael Wright faced legal consequences, but nothing could undo what had happened. The boiling steam, the unanswered screams, and the hours of agony that Sean endured are now a dark part of the city's history. And for those who knew him, the question remains, how could something like this be allowed to happen? It was February 28, 1989 in Miyakoji Village, a quiet rural area in Japan's Fukushima prefecture. That evening, a 23-year-old elementary school teacher had just finished work and returned to her dormitory, a small, simple room in a staff housing complex. The dormitory was in a remote area, and each room had a squat toilet connected to a small septic tank. It wasn't modern, but it was functional. As the teacher went to use the toilet, something unusual caught her eye. Inside the toilet opening, she noticed a shoe. Confused, she looked closer and saw something far worse, a human leg. Horrified, she ran out of the room and called for help. When police arrived, they found a body wedged inside the septic tank's narrow pipe. The opening inside the toilet was only about 8 inches wide, while the tank's pipe was 14 inches across. The body was positioned in a disturbing way, head tilted up toward the toilet opening, as if looking through it. The victim was identified as 26-year-old Naoyuki Kano, a sales manager for a company that worked with nuclear power plants in the region. Well known in the village, he was regarded as a friendly and responsible man. He had been missing for several days before his body was discovered. The police concluded that Naoyuki had passed away from hypothermia. There were no signs of injury or struggle. He was found shirtless, clutching a neatly folded shirt to his chest, and barefoot. The theory was that he had crawled into the septic tank to spy on women using the toilet, had become trapped and succumbed to the cold. But this explanation didn't sit well with many people. Those who knew Naoyuki found it hard to believe that he would do something like that. He had no history of such behavior, and the idea that he could squeeze into such a tight space seemed unlikely. The structure of the septic system itself raised even more questions. The U-shaped pipe had one opening outside for waste removal and the other inside the toilet. The toilet opening was far too small for an adult to fit through. Even the outdoor opening, though slightly wider, would have been an incredibly tight squeeze. How could he have ended up inside in that position on his own? There were other strange details as well. His shoes were found in 2 different places, one inside the septic tank near his head, and the other far away on a riverbank. His car was parked near the dormitory, unlocked with the key still in the ignition, suggesting he hadn't planned to be gone for long. Adding to the mystery, Now Yuki had recently been involved in a political campaign for a local village chief. The election had created tension, particularly among supporters of the nearby nuclear power plant. Some wondered if his death was connected to these disputes. A month before his disappearance, an incident at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant led to a temporary reactor shutdown. Shortly afterward, the person responsible for the reactor took his own life. Some speculated there might be a connection between these events and now Yuki's fate. Suspicion also surrounded the teacher who found the body. How did she notice the shoe in such poor lighting? And why did she lift the septic tank lid herself before authorities arrived? Some found her actions unusual, though there was no direct evidence linking her to Naoyuki's death. She had known him before and even helped him with a separate issue involving phone harassment, but their relationship appeared to be purely platonic. Despite these unanswered questions, the police ruled Naoyuki's death an accident. They believed he had entered the septic tank on his own and died from the freezing temperatures. The case was closed. However, the villagers weren't satisfied. They pushed for further investigation, but no new evidence emerged. Over time, the case faded into local lore, an eerie, unsolved mystery that left many uneasy. Decades later, the internet revived interest in the story. It spread across forums, YouTube, and social media, capturing the attention of those fascinated by bizarre and unexplained cases. To this day, no one knows exactly what happened to Naoyuki Kano. Was it a tragic accident? Or was there something more sinister at play? The truth remains buried, leaving only speculation and lingering questions. It was May 21, 2023, when 20-year-old Zachary Porter set off on an adventure in Alaska with his friends. A sophomore studying economics at Washington University in St. Louis, Zachary had a passion for travel and the outdoors. He and 3 friends had arrived in Alaska to explore before summer activities began. That afternoon, they found themselves walking along the Turnagain Arm mudflats near Hope, a small community about 90 minutes south of Anchorage. Turnagain Arm is known for its dramatic tides and dangerous mudflats. The flats may appear solid at low tide, but the fine silt can quickly trap anyone who steps on it, creating a quicksand-like effect. Unfortunately, Zachary would soon learn just how dangerous this terrain could be. As the group walked, Zachary suddenly became stuck. At first it seemed like a minor issue, but the more he tried to move, the deeper he sank. His friends rushed to help, but their efforts only made things worse. Realizing they couldn't free him, one of them called 911 at 5:45 p.m. Time was not on their side. The tide in Turnagain Arm is one of the fastest rising in the world, and water was already creeping in. Fire departments from Girdwood and Hope Sunrise were dispatched, but they were still an hour away. Zachary's friends could do nothing but watch helplessly as the water continued to rise. Rescue teams arrived as quickly as they could, using specialized equipment to try to free him. However, the incoming tide had softened the silt, making extraction nearly impossible. By 6:43 p.m., Zachary was completely submerged. Despite their best efforts, rescuers couldn't reach him in time. At 7 p.m., emergency crews accessed the area where he had been trapped, but it was too late. The operation shifted from a rescue to a recovery mission. The next morning, on May 22nd, his body was recovered. Zachary's death devastated his family, friends, and community. He was known for his adventurous spirit and love for the outdoors. His father, Todd Porter, recalled how family hikes and getting lost in nature had been some of Zachary's favorite experiences. His mother, Susan Ryder, described him as someone who was on his way to becoming an incredible adult with dreams of traveling and experiencing the world. His sister Elizabeth spoke of his kindness, calling him compassionate, hardworking, and intelligent. He had been a mentor to young baseball players and sailing students, always leading by example. His former baseball coach, Ray Del Fava, described him as a quiet leader, someone who inspired others both on and off the field. Zachary had a deep love for sailing and the outdoors. His mother had always supported his passion, and he had dreams of becoming a professional sailor. She shared how he was determined to make a difference in the world, both through his adventurous pursuits and his kindness toward others. The Turnagain Arm mudflats have claimed lives before. The last known fatal incident was nearly a decade earlier. The area is deceptive. At low tide, it looks like solid ground, but the silt beneath acts like quicksand. Once someone gets stuck, escaping without help is nearly impossible. When the tide rises, the situation quickly becomes life-threatening. Christy Peterson, an EMT and administrator with the Hope Sunrise Volunteer Fire Department, has seen firsthand how dangerous the flats can be. She explained that many people ignore the warning signs, thinking they can walk across safely. But once trapped, time is limited. She stressed the importance of calling 911 immediately if someone gets stuck. Every second counts. Zachary's family was left to grieve the unimaginable loss of their son and brother. They remembered him not only for his adventurous nature, but also for his generosity and kindness. He had always wanted to make a positive impact, whether through mentoring others or simply being there for those who needed him. In the wake of his passing, his family decided to channel their grief into something meaningful. They planned to start a foundation in his name, one that would give underprivileged children opportunities to explore the outdoors. Through this effort, they hoped to honor Zachary's love for nature, while helping others experience the same joy he found in it. Zachary's story is a sobering example of how unpredictable nature can be. The Turnagain Arm mudflats may seem peaceful, but they hold hidden dangers. His family hopes that his legacy will not only inspire others to explore the outdoors, but also remind them to respect the forces of nature. Though his life was cut short, Zachary Porter's adventurous spirit and kindness will not be forgotten. His loved ones are determined to keep his memory alive, ensuring that others continue to explore the world, just as he always dreamed of doing. It's the summer of 2014. Like many young people, 21-year-old Oscar Otero Aguilar from Mexico wanted to make the most of the summer. But what started as a night of drinking and having fun with friends took a tragic turn for Oscar, when what seemed like a harmless attempt to take a selfie turned into a preventable nightmare, and what was meant to be just another social media post became a fatal misjudgment, one that would leave his family and friends in shock and prompt widespread criticism online. Oscar, a young man from northern Mexico City, was known to be active on social media. His Facebook page featured images of him posing with cars and enjoying nights out with friends, often surrounded by alcohol. He had a fondness for capturing moments and sharing them with his online friends. However, his love for photography and social media led him to make a fatal mistake. On the night of the incident, Oscar had been drinking with two friends, Omar Abner Campos Vives and another individual known only by the nickname El Paco. The three were enjoying themselves, laughing, drinking, and taking pictures. At some point during the night, Oscar came up with a seemingly exciting idea. He wanted to take a photo holding a gun. The image was meant for Facebook, another addition to the collection of snapshots that documented his social life. However, things quickly took a dark turn. The gun in question was a wood-handled .45 caliber pistol. Oscar Otero Aguilar picked it up, ready to take the picture. Unaware or indifferent to the dangers of handling a loaded weapon while intoxicated, he held the gun close to his head, attempting to frame the perfect shot. In the process, he accidentally pulled the trigger. A single gunshot rang out, piercing the night and sending a wave of panic through the household. The bullet struck Oscar in the forehead. Nearby, his friends were stunned. A neighbor, Manfredo Paes, recalled hearing the gunfire followed by a scream. Realizing that someone had been hurt, he immediately contacted the authorities. When police arrived, they found Oscar still alive but gravely wounded. Despite emergency efforts, he succumbed to his injuries at the scene. The aftermath of the incident unfolded quickly. Police arrested Omar, who was present at the time of the shooting, while El Paco managed to flee before authorities arrived. The Ministry of Public Security later confirmed that Oscar's death appeared to be accidental. An autopsy was scheduled to determine the full extent of his injuries. While tragic, Oscar's case is not unique. Accidental firearm deaths are a significant issue, particularly in countries with high gun ownership rates. In the United States, an estimated 37% of gunshot injuries result from accidental shootings. These incidents encompass a variety of situations: firearms discharging while being cleaned, hunting accidents, stray bullets striking unintended targets, and tragic mishaps like Oscar's. Although the overall rate of firearm deaths in the U.S. has risen in recent years, accidental gun deaths have seen a decline over the past 25 years, largely due to increased awareness and safety regulations. Oscar's death, however, underscored a different and growing problem: the increasing risks associated with social media-driven behavior. His case was not an isolated one. Globally, there have been numerous reports of individuals suffering fatal injuries while attempting to capture daring or dangerous selfies. Many internet users were quick to criticize Oscar's decision to pose with a loaded firearm, arguing that the tragedy could have been easily avoided. His death served as a stark reminder of the deadly consequences of reckless behavior, particularly when alcohol, firearms, and social media are involved. What began as a night of fun among friends ended in a senseless loss of life. Oscar's final moments were defined by an avoidable mistake, one that left those who knew him grieving and the public questioning the length some will go for the perfect photo. In 2016, Jia Lijun, a businessman visiting Shishiaku Wildlife Park in Rongcheng, China, sought to make the most of his trip by capturing photos and videos of the park's diverse wildlife. Traveling alone, he wanted to share the pictures with his friends, showing them glimpses of the animals housed within the park's free-range coastal environment. As he moved through the exhibits, his excitement grew, particularly when he reached the walrus enclosure. Like many visitors, he was fascinated by the enormous marine mammal and wanted a closer look. However, his attempt to take a selfie near the walrus would lead to a tragic and irreversible chain of events. As soon as he began his visit, Jia started enthusiastically sending pictures and videos of the animals to his friends. He seemed especially eager to document his experience with the walrus, unaware of the potential danger. Walruses are large marine mammals primarily found in Arctic regions. They are social animals known for their intelligence and close bonds with their herd. While they are not naturally aggressive toward humans, their immense size, often exceeding a ton, means that even playful interactions can be dangerous. Other park visitors saw Gia positioning himself near the enclosure with his back to the animal, focusing on his phone as he captured a selfie. The picture shows Gia looking down and smiling at the massive animal. He had no idea what was about to happen. The walrus, weighing approximately 1.5 tons, approached Gia from behind, wrapped its powerful flippers around him, and dragged him into the water. From outside, it looked like the animal was playing. For a second, witnesses believed the walrus was merely interacting with the visitor. However, as Gia was pulled beneath the surface, it became clear that he was in distress. As chaos erupted among the spectators, Duan, the walrus's longtime keeper, quickly attempted to intervene. Duan had cared for the walrus for over a decade, raising it from a young age and developing a close bond with the animal. Witnesses saw him try to use bamboo poles to rescue Gia, hoping to prompt the walrus to release its grip. When these efforts failed, Duan made the decision to enter the water himself, determined to save the struggling man despite the danger. Tragically, as soon as Duan entered the pool, the walrus turned its attention to him. It rushed toward him, wrapped him in a similar embrace, and dragged him under as well. Despite being described as a strong swimmer by his colleagues, Duan was unable to escape. The sheer size and strength of the walrus proved overwhelming. Both men were held tightly as the animal moved through the water, submerging them repeatedly. By the time additional zoo staff arrived and managed to intervene, it was too late. Gia and Duan had both drowned, victims of the walrus's immense power. The deaths of both the businessman and the dedicated keeper left park staff and visitors in shock. The incident sparked widespread discussion and criticism, particularly regarding safety measures at the wildlife park. Many questioned why there were no barriers preventing close contact between visitors and the walrus. On Chinese social media platforms such as Weibo, users voiced concerns about the lack of protective measures at zoos, with some arguing that accidents like this were preventable. Gia's friend Wu later expressed his disbelief, recalling how Gia had been happily sending videos just minutes before his tragic death. The zoo accepted responsibility for the accident and agreed to compensate Gia's family with 900,000 yuan, approximately $137,000. However, many believe this did little to address the core issue, the absence of sufficient safety precautions. The incident reignited discussions about wildlife tourism and human interaction with large animals. Some experts weighed in, emphasizing that walruses, though not typically aggressive, are immensely strong creatures capable of causing unintentional harm. Duan's colleagues noted that the walrus at Xixiaku Wildlife Park had developed a strong attachment to its keeper, and its actions may have been misinterpreted as affection rather than aggression. Whether the walrus intended to harm the men or was simply engaging in what it perceived as play remains unclear, but the consequences were fatal. Despite the tragedy, the walrus attraction at the park remained open, further fueling debate over the zoo's responsibility. Some argued that greater restrictions should be placed on interactions between humans and powerful animals, while others blamed visitors for underestimating the risks. The incident also added to the growing concern over selfie-related deaths, as more people put themselves in danger in pursuit of the perfect photo. Ultimately, the deaths of Jia Lejun and Duan underscored the unpredictable nature of wildlife encounters, even within controlled environments. What began as an ordinary visit to a zoo ended in a devastating loss, serving as a grim reminder that no matter how familiar humans may become with animals, their instinctive behaviors can still pose significant risks.
April 4, 2019, in Chorley, Lancashire. Darren Hickey, a 51-year-old wedding venue manager, was finishing his workday at Ridgemont House, which he managed with pride. Darren was admired for his resilience. 7 years earlier, he had survived a massive stroke that required an 18-month hospital stay. Despite ongoing challenges with walking and speaking, Darren built a meaningful life focused on charity work. His dedication earned him the Stroke Association's Inspirational Person of Courage Award. That afternoon, Darren's day took an unexpected turn. As he prepared to leave, a chef asked him to taste a fish cake for an upcoming event. Darren agreed, taking a small bite. Unbeknownst to him, the fish cake was extremely hot and burned his throat. Darren dismissed it as a minor discomfort, unaware of the serious consequences it would bring. Initially, Darren didn't think the injury was severe. However, by afternoon, the pain grew worse. He informed his partner, Neil Parkinson, who encouraged him to seek medical help. Darren went to Chorley Hospital's urgent care ward, where he described the burning sensation and difficulty swallowing. A healthcare practitioner examined him and consulted an ENT specialist from Preston Hospital. Since the burn was deep in Darren's throat, it couldn't be seen without specialized equipment. With no visible injuries in his mouth or tongue, Darren was sent home with paracetamol and instructions to return if his symptoms worsened. Dr. Patrick Waugh, a pathologist who later conducted Darren's post-mortem, explained that such injuries were exceptionally rare. Burns to the throat is usually seen in cases involving extreme heat from industrial accidents or fire inhalation. Because the swelling caused by these burns develops slowly, symptoms may seem manageable initially but become life-threatening over time. This delay made Darren's condition difficult to identify and treat. Later that evening, Darren tried to rest at home, but his throat continued to swell. Around 9:45 p.m., Neil heard alarming sounds and found Darren choking and struggling to breathe. Neil tried to help, but Darren collapsed. In a panic, Neil called for an ambulance. Unfortunately, a delay in locating their address added about 5 minutes to the emergency response. By the time paramedics arrived, the swelling had blocked Darren's airway entirely. He was rushed to Royal Bolton Hospital, but was pronounced dead in the early hours of April 5th, less than 12 hours after eating the fish cake. During the Bolton Coroner's Court inquest, acting senior coroner Alan Walsh described the case as a rare and devastating tragedy. Dr. Ward testified that the burn caused Darren's voice box to swell, which ultimately blocked his breathing. He noted the difficulty in diagnosing the injury, given the absence of visible burns in Darren's mouth. The coroner also raised concerns about Darren's care at Chorley Hospital. While acknowledging the unusual nature of the injury, he stressed the importance of thorough evaluations and advanced diagnostic tools in similar cases. Representatives from GTD Healthcare and NHS Greater Preston Clinical Commissioning Group assured the court they would review the incident to prevent future occurrences. Darren's death deeply impacted his loved ones and the community. Friends, family, and colleagues remembered him as a kind and courageous individual who overcame immense challenges. His charity work and positive outlook inspired many, making his sudden loss even more heartbreaking. Darren's story reminds us of how small incidents can lead to unexpected tragedies. It underscores the need for caution in everyday life and vigilance in medical care. While nothing can bring Darren back, his case is a call to action to ensure similar outcomes are avoided in the future. It was February 25, 2010, in Invercargill, a quiet town on New Zealand's South Island. Christopher Hodgkinson discovered his partner of 15 years, Natasha Harris, slumped against the bathroom wall. She was struggling to breathe, her breaths shallow and labored. Despite attempts to save her, Natasha passed away from cardiac arrest. She was only 30 years old. Natasha left behind 8 young children and a partner grieving her loss. Her death revealed a troubling dependency, not on drugs or alcohol, but on Coca-Cola. Natasha's addiction began in her teenage years. Over time, her soda consumption escalated to 10 liters a day, equivalent to 18 pints. This amount exceeded the recommended daily sugar intake by more than 11 times and doubled the safe caffeine limit. Her daily routine revolved around Coke, starting her day with a glass and ending it the same way. Without it, she suffered withdrawal symptoms like irritability and trembling. Her mother-in-law, Vivian Hodgkinson, described how Natasha became extremely agitated if Coke was unavailable. For years, Natasha experienced various health issues, including fatigue, nausea, and heart palpitations. She vomited multiple times a week and struggled with energy levels. However, neither she nor her family connected these symptoms to her Coke consumption, attributing them to stress or unrelated health problems. The effects of her habit were devastating. Natasha's teeth decayed completely and had to be removed, a direct result of the high sugar content in her diet. One of her children was born without tooth enamel, which doctors linked to Natasha's soda intake during pregnancy. Internally, her body suffered severe damage. An autopsy showed her liver was enlarged with fatty deposits caused by excessive sugar. She also had hypokalemia, a condition marked by dangerously low potassium levels which can cause heart issues. Pathologist Dr. Dan Mornin explained that her symptoms, muscle weakness, fatigue, and vomiting, were consistent with this condition. Her caffeine consumption also contributed to her irregular heartbeat, which ultimately led to her death. On the day she passed, Natasha didn't appear alarmingly unwell, though she complained of feeling unwell. Later, Christopher found her unresponsive in the bathroom. Despite calling for help, paramedics were unable to save her. An inquest into Natasha's death highlighted the extreme impact of her soda addiction. Coroner David Crerar concluded that her excessive Coke intake played a significant role in her cardiac arrest. He stated her death was unlikely to have happened when it did and how it did, without her extreme soda consumption. The combination of sugar and caffeine caused serious metabolic imbalances, including hypokalemia. Health experts noted that consuming up to 8 liters of liquid daily can be harmful, even without factoring in sugar and caffeine. Coca-Cola Oceania expressed disappointment in the findings, arguing there was no consensus on the exact cause of Natasha's heart attack and stating they could not control how much of their product consumers choose to drink. In response, the coroner recommended actions to prevent similar cases. He urged Coca-Cola to include caffeine on labels and add warnings about excessive consumption. He also called on the New Zealand Ministry of Health to consider stricter regulations on caffeinated beverages. However, some experts doubted whether warning labels would have changed Natasha's behavior. Catherine Rich of the NZ Food and Grocery Council noted that Natasha also smoked heavily and ignored medical advice for other health issues, suggesting broader lifestyle factors contributed to her death. Family members described Natasha as a loving mother who prioritized her children above all else, often at her own expense. She skipped meals to ensure her kids had enough and spent weeks planning their birthdays to make them special. Her sister, Raylene Finlayson, shared how Natasha's dependency on Coke became a coping mechanism in a difficult life. Struggling with feelings of being trapped and hopeless, she used Coke as others might turn to alcohol or drugs for comfort. After her death, Natasha's partner struggled to care for their children, who were eventually placed into state care. Christopher faced additional challenges, including legal issues and financial strain. Natasha Harris's story is a warning about the dangers of unchecked habits. Her family hopes her tragic death will raise awareness about the potential risks of excessive soda consumption and the broader struggles tied to dependency. It was a quiet morning on August 16, 2010, in Nebworth, Hertfordshire. 43-year-old Mitchell Carey, a graphic designer and father of two, decided to skip breakfast that day. By lunchtime, he was hungry and went to a local cafe near his workplace to grab a quick meal. He chose a simple corned beef sandwich, unaware that this choice would lead to a tragic and rare medical crisis. At first, everything seemed normal. Mitchell returned to work and ate his sandwich. But within 25 minutes, he began sweating heavily and complaining of severe stomach pain. The pain was so intense that he removed his clothes, describing it as 10 out of 10. Alarmed, his co-workers called for medical help. Paramedics arrived quickly and rushed Mitchell to Lister Hospital in Stevenage. Doctors initially thought it was a case of food poisoning. He was treated with painkillers and sent home the same day, instructed to rest and manage his symptoms with medication. Unfortunately, Mitchell's condition worsened overnight. By the next day, August 17th, he was experiencing severe stomach cramps and uncontrollable vomiting. His health deteriorated rapidly, and he collapsed at home. His wife, Debbie Carey, immediately called emergency services. When paramedics arrived, Mitchell was in critical condition. He was suffering from acute organ failure and had already endured a heart attack. He was rushed back to Lister Hospital, but despite the medical team's efforts, his condition kept declining. In the early hours of August 18th, Mitchell passed away due to multiple organ failure caused by a rare bacterial infection. The infection was later identified as Clostridium perfringens type A, a bacterium linked to food poisoning. This strain is so rare that only 7 other cases have been reported worldwide. Once it enters the bloodstream, it is almost always fatal. In Mitchell's case, the bacterium likely came from his corned beef sandwich. Doctors explained that the rapid onset of symptoms within just 25 minutes of eating strongly suggested the sandwich was the source. Environmental health officers tested corned beef from the cafe found no contamination. While this made it impossible to confirm the exact source, the timeline of events left little doubt for medical experts and Mitchell's family. Mitchell's death was not the first tragedy for his family. He had been the widower of Anna Wilson, the daughter of TV presenter and former Arsenal goalkeeper Bob Wilson. Anna passed away in 1998 at just 31 years old after battling a rare and aggressive cancer called malignant schwannoma, which caused a large tumor in her chest. Mitchell and Anna had been married for 6 years at the time. After Anna's death, Mitchell remained close to her parents, Bob and Megs Wilson, who considered him a beloved member of their family. Bob, now retired and living in Dorset, said he was devastated by losing his son-in-law, describing him as dearly loved. In 2004, Mitchell found love again with Debbie Smith, a close friend of his late wife. The two married and built a life together in Nebworth, raising Mitchell's sons, Dylan and Ewan, who were 9 and 7 years old when he passed away. An inquest into Mitchell's death highlighted the shocking rarity of his condition. Coroner Edward Thomas called it an extremely rare case and said details would be shared with the Department of Health to raise awareness about the dangers of Clostridium perfringens type A. The official cause of death was ruled as multiple organ failure due to intravascular coagulation and enterocolitis caused by the bacterial infection. The cafe and its suppliers faced scrutiny following the tragedy, but no legal action was taken. Aldi, the retailer that supplied the corned beef, expressed confidence in their product's safety and extended their condolences to Mitchell's family. Mitchell's untimely death left his family and community heartbroken. It is a reminder of how rare but devastating bacterial infections can be and the importance of vigilance in food safety practices.
2014 in Xinjiang City, China, when an ordinary accident turned into a horrific disaster. A woman visiting her husband's family had just finished using an open-pit toilet when she accidentally dropped her brand-new phone into the waste below. The phone was worth around 2,000 yuan, or about $320 at the time, and she was determined to get it back. She called her husband for help, and without hesitation, he jumped into the pit. But as soon as he landed, the toxic fumes from the sewage overwhelmed him, and he lost consciousness almost immediately. Seeing this, his mother panicked and jumped in after him, trying to pull him out. But she, too, was quickly overcome by the gases and collapsed. Now, with both her husband and mother-in-law trapped, the woman made a desperate decision. She climbed into the pit herself. The moment she entered, the fumes hit her, and she fainted. One by one, the family members were falling. Her father-in-law, watching in horror, tried to call for help, but in a final act of desperation, jumped in as well. Like the others, he was quickly overpowered by the toxic air and lost consciousness. At this point, the entire family was trapped inside. Neighbors heard the commotion and rushed to help. Realizing how serious the situation was, they used ropes to pull the victims out, but even some of the rescuers were affected. One neighbor fainted from the fumes. By the time all 6 people were pulled from the pit, the damage was already done. The woman's husband and mother-in-law did not survive. The others, including the woman, her father-in-law, and 2 neighbors, were in critical condition. They were immediately taken to the hospital, but the loss had already shattered the family. Authorities later determined that the victims had only been in the pit for about 5 minutes, but that was enough for the toxic gases to do irreversible harm. The realization was devastating. If help had arrived sooner, the outcome might have been different. As news spread, the community was left in shock. The woman's uncle, overwhelmed with grief, struggled to comprehend the sudden loss of 2 family members. "What are we supposed to do now?" he asked. The entire neighborhood mourned the tragedy, grappling with the fact that something so simple, retrieving a phone, had led to such unimaginable consequences. In the aftermath, the incident left an eerie reminder of how dangerous confined spaces with toxic fumes can be. The phone, the object that set off the entire chain of events, was never recovered. But at that point, it no longer mattered. The real loss was the lives that had been taken too soon and the irreversible impact left on those who survived. This story is not just about an accident. It's a chilling example of how quickly things can spiral out of control. A single moment of desperation led to an unimaginable loss, leaving behind grief, unanswered questions, and a family forever changed. It was 1992 when Greg Austin Gingrich took a trip to the Grand Canyon with his teenage daughter. Greg was known for his sense of humor, always playing jokes and making people laugh. He and his daughter shared a close bond, built on adventure and fun. This trip seemed like just another opportunity for Greg to pull one of his classic pranks, but this time it would cost him everything. The Grand Canyon is one of the most breathtaking natural wonders in the world, attracting millions of visitors each year. But with its stunning views come serious risks. The steep cliffs and unpredictable terrain can be dangerous for those who don't take caution. Greg, however, wasn't thinking about safety when he decided to stage a stunt in front of his daughter. Standing near the edge of a guard wall, he pretended to lose his balance, flailing his arms and stumbling as if he was about to fall. The plan was to scare his daughter, then land safely on a small rock below, revealing it was all just a joke. His daughter, used to his antics, wasn't impressed. She simply walked ahead, assuming it was just another one of his pranks. But Greg had made a terrible miscalculation. The rock he intended to land on was much farther than he thought. As he slipped off the ledge, expecting to catch himself, he lost control. Instead of landing safely, he fell, plummeting nearly 400 feet. His daughter, unaware of what had just happened, kept walking, likely thinking he would come up laughing, as he always did. By the time she realized something was wrong, it was too late. Park rangers arrived at the scene, and after a search, they found Greg's body at the bottom of the canyon. What had started as a harmless joke had turned into a tragedy. Greg's daughter was left in shock. One moment she had been with her father listening to his jokes, the next he was gone. The reality of what had happened was something she would carry for the rest of her life. This wasn't the first time someone had lost their life at the Grand Canyon. Every year, around a dozen people die in accidents there. Many are due to missteps near the edge, misjudging distances, or ignoring safety warnings. The canyon's cliffs are unforgiving, and even the smallest mistake can have fatal consequences. Greg's story is a chilling example of how unpredictable nature can be. He was confident in his ability to pull off the prank, never considering that a small error could lead to disaster. He assumed he knew the terrain well enough, but nature doesn't care about confidence. It only reacts to actions. His family was left to grieve, and his daughter in particular had to live with the memory of that day. What was meant to be a simple joke turned into an event that would haunt her forever. Greg's death was not about recklessness or a lack of experience. It was a case of underestimating the danger. The Grand Canyon is beautiful, but it commands respect. One misstep, one wrong move can change everything. While accidents like these are rare, they do happen. Many visitors let their guard down, caught up in the excitement of exploring such a majestic place. They take risks for the sake of thrill or fun, forgetting that nature doesn't play along. If Greg had thought twice before attempting his prank, he might have walked away from that trip with just another funny story to tell. Instead, his daughter left the Grand Canyon without her father, forever carrying the weight of that day. For those who visit places like the Grand Canyon, Greg's story is a reminder. Beauty can be deceiving, and nature is not something to take lightly. A single moment of miscalculation can change everything, and sometimes there is no second chance.